Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dallas Social Toastmasters this evening. My name is Mark Schroeder, and I'm going to be the Zoom facilitator. We are on November 12th, Thursday, and we are the home of the loud and the proud. We're about to begin our meeting. Let me go over just a couple of things. I think a lot of you are familiar with Zoom, but just in case, we've taken care of all of the role assignments, and everybody, I think, has the information that we need to get started. Very quick, brief navigation. If you're on a PC or a Mac, you'll probably see that there's a view button up in the upper right-hand corner. The view button allows you to select either speaker view or gallery view, where you will see everybody. Speaker view, it changes with the speaker. There is a share screen at the bottom if you happen to need it, but more importantly, there's a chat down there that you will want to select in order to open the chat window. And again, my name is Mark Schroeder. If you're having any issues during the meeting, you can chat with me. That is also how we cast our votes. Our votes will be cast going toward the person who is the vote counter this evening. And we'll go over that in just a moment. Also, let me go ahead and do the share screen so that I can show you very quickly our agenda. If you happen to be online, you can go to DallasSocialToastmasters.com to see our website. In the third column under the member section, you will see current agenda. If you click on current agenda, I've already got it open, so I won't, but it will open in a separate tab. That is where you will find our agenda for this evening. We've taken care of all agenda issues so far this evening, and with that, I will be able to go ahead and start the meeting by calling on our invocation and pledge and Toastmaster for the evening, Tanya Howard. Tanya.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone tonight. So our theme for tonight is old school, and I resemble that terminology. I just enjoy everything about old school music, old school TV shows. It's really cool that with my daughters, they are into watching Full House and Fuller House, and they watch all these shows and they just love it. And so it's kind of cool because I can connect to it with them, and they're just having a great time. I just feel like I am an advocate for writing letters and thank you notes. And while my kids were doing virtual school with me, I made them write a letter every week. And so, and they, after a while, they got in the hang of it, and they just knew that they had to select somebody to write a letter to. I still make them write thank you notes and cards, and because I just think it's important. And there are a lot of things about old school that I think are still important. I say old school is a group of people who are traditionalists. And so really they're nostalgic for the glory days, I should say. And it's a term that that we use with a sense of pride, old school, that there's just really some great things that you can't really replace about things that we used to do old school style. So I still get a newspaper. Anybody else get a newspaper? I get I get it. No one else, just me. I get the newspaper twice a week, Wednesday and Sunday. And so on Sundays, I sit and read the newspaper. My girls also read the comics. And it's just something that I just enjoy doing. A lot of times I've already read a few of the articles during the week online, but I just think it's another old school tradition that I just really enjoy. This year I have transitioned to my electronic calendar, but I still drag my big agenda with my handwritten calendar. Like, I still take this everywhere with me just because I want to write it down on the calendar. I want to cross it off on my list. So it's still important to have that, I think. But yes, I just really enjoy old school things. I would like to go ahead and introduce our roles for the evening, our duty holders. And I would like first to start with our timer and vote counter, Dagan Newland.
All right, thank you. So as timer tonight, I'll be in charge of timing different sections of the meeting with the prepared speeches, the evaluations, and the table topics. So when I'm doing my evaluation, I will need somebody to time me. Would you be able to do that, Mark Schroeder?
Believe I'm off mute. Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can do that.
All right. So we got that squared away. So for the speakers, I don't think, yeah, well, except for, well, 1 5 to 7, 1 6 to 8 minutes. So I'll just say that when they hit their minimum time, they'll get the green. And when they hit the middle time, they'll get the yellow. And when they hit the maximum time, they'll hit the red and have 30 seconds to wrap up after that. And during table topics, you have 1 to 2 minutes. You'll get the green at 1, yellow at 1.5, and 2 at red, and have 30 seconds to wrap up. Then for evaluations, you'll get the green at 2, yellow at 2:30, and red at 3, and have 30 seconds to wrap up. Remember, for speakers and evaluators, both have 30 seconds on either side of the green or red. And for table topics, though, you must hit the green to qualify. And again, you have 30 seconds to wrap up after the red. And as for vote counter, if with different sections you're asked to vote for, then speaker, best table topic, best evaluator, and best of the big 3. You will send those votes to me when called upon as the vote counter, and then I will tally them. And if there is a tie, I will be the tiebreaker, but I will not announce that there was a tie. And those are my duties for tonight. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you. And this evening, our all counter is Karen Lee. And also Posture Bell. Thank you, Karen.
Madam Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters and guests, as all counter, I'll be listening for long pauses, such as and I'll make a note on it, and will give a report when called upon. As for Posture Bell, I'll watch for interesting body language or movements like touching glasses or playing with hair. And I'll make notes of these, and I'll give a report when called upon. Madam Toastmaster, back to you.
Thank you. And this evening, our grammarian is Mark Sims.
As grammarian, I will be listening for any grammatical lapses. We usually don't seem to have a lot, but I will be listening. I'll also be listening for any colorful phrases that you use. We've heard a good one already, old school. And so Tanya not only used it, but defined it, which is very helpful. And in addition, I will introduce the word of the day. And tonight's word is intrepid. And it's a great Toastmaster word. It's an adjective. It means fearless. I mean, you could say fearless, but you can also say intrepid. So imagine the intrepid Toastmasters who are all too eager to take on speaking challenges. And I will remind you later on also that you need to use the word intrepid during the table topic responses in order to win the competition. And that is my duty. And back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Great. Thumbs up if you've seen the movie Old School with Will Ferrell and yes, Vince Vaughn. I highly recommend it if you need a gut laugh and just silly movie. It's the best. You probably could see it on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but it is a great movie, Old School. I recommend it. Remember when you had 2 choices for bread, wheat bread and white bread? But now with Pepperidge Farm bread, you can have cinnamon toast, cinnamon raisin, banana bread. There's so many different choices of bread, but we ran out of our Pepperidge Farm cinnamon toast, and I took wheat bread, put some butter on it, toasted it, put butter on it, sprinkled some cinnamon and sugar, and my kids thought I was a genius because I made cinnamon toast. They think I'm the best cook in the world. And so now they prefer old school cinnamon toast, just regular toast in the toaster with your own cinnamon. And so they just don't realize that that's what we had back in the day when we didn't have Pepperidge Farm and all the different flavors of bread. So tonight we have two speakers, and would like to introduce our first speaker is Mark Schroeder, and his evaluator is Lee King. And Mark, would you like to, I'm sorry, Lee, would you like to introduce Mark's speech?
I gotta get myself off mute. All right, Mark will be doing his speech on effective body language. The purpose of his speech is for the member to deliver a speech with awareness of international and universal body language, as well as to learn, practice, and refine how he or she uses nonverbal communication when delivering a speech, and his time is 6 to 8 minutes.
Great, thank you. Help me welcome Mark Schroeder, Paint by Numbers.
Thank you, Tanya. Tonight I'm going to talk about a topic that I have wanted to talk about for a while in this club. It has always been very, very difficult to do it, just because what I would be trying to show you is way too small and way too difficult when we're at Ozona's. I want to talk to you about one of my hobbies, which is body painting. Body painting is taking either brush paints or effectively spray paints through an airbrush and painting on the human body. And what I propose to do tonight is to go through a little bit of what it is, what the equipment is, and show you some samples, both samples that I have done and samples that I am nowhere near competent to do. Let me start a little bit with the equipment. First of all, of course, one option is to just use a regular paintbrush. And we all know what a paintbrush is, so I don't actually have a paintbrush to show you. If you've ever seen Bob Ross paint those happy little clouds, you know what a paintbrush is. What you may not know so much about, however, is an airbrush. And I've got an airbrush here. This is an airbrush. What you notice is there is a connector on the bottom here where the air comes in, and this bottle here is the bottle for the paint. And in general, what you do is when the air is flowing, you have 2 degrees of freedom on this. And I'm going to have to turn sideways just in order to get it so that you can see the finger well. I have 2 degrees of freedom. The first degree of freedom is pushing down. Pushing down starts the airflow. Pulling back on it starts the flow of the paint. For the most part, most people just push down until it's done, and then they start pulling back. But when you pull back, you can either, if you pull back just a little bit, you get a small amount of paint going through. You pull back a lot, you get a huge amount of paint going through. It takes a lot to master the 2-factor, or if you will, the 2 degrees of freedom in an airbrush. But this is what I basically use. And the bottles come apart so that as you are working, you can change colors easily. And the little thing here that's glass underneath is an air filter to pull water out so that you don't get too much humidity through the airbrush. The other thing that you will see people use is, if you're doing it with a paintbrush, typically you'll use something like this. I'm going to open one of these up. This is cake body makeup or cake face paint. And it's called cake because it is fairly solid rather than being a liquid. And if you are doing a large area of the body, what you can do is you can actually use a sponge. This is a fully round sponge that I've cut in half. And what you would do is basically just rub it into the paint and then put it on the body like that. That would be basically the way you would use it. Let me talk just a little bit about my interest in all of this. And I'm going to do that by doing a screen share and showing some of the work. Let me go ahead and do my screen share. And I will bring up this. Nope, not that one, the other one. That one. Let's bring this one back. All right, so let's start with, when I first started airbrushing, I was airbrushing on paper. This is an example of one of the very, very first things that I did. And I chose this way to display it because with this, I can actually zoom in. What you will notice here, this was all a piece of white paper, and depending upon whether or not I airbrushed a little bit of white or a little bit of darker blue, I got this effect. And it was done effectively with a stencil. You put a piece of plastic all the way across everything. So you put plastic over everything, take an X-Acto knife, cut the outline out, peel it up, and then you spray. And then you can put that back. And if you pull the other side up of the other side of the edge, you can do the background. So that is the general mechanism that this was done with. Here's another one, much more complicated. And it's not moving. Oh, you gotta love it when the visuals are not doing what they're supposed to do. All right, let me restart. That was working fine before. That's my second one. Much more complicated, a lot more detail in this one, of course. And yes, all of this is all done with little bitty cuts. Even when you get all the way down here into this little bitty crevice, all of that is done with an X-Acto knife, trying to do those cuts, as well as the eyes. Very precise work, difficult to do. Quite frankly, took a long time to do that. This is one of the first body paints that I did. It is probably the only bikini that has ever been done that ties on both sides. And I did that because tying, the ties were very interesting to try to do, and you have to paint each and every little shadow. So quite a bit of detail and care. Like I said, the front and the back were both done the same way. Another view of the same model. This was a robot that I did. This was entirely done with brushes. There was no airbrush with this, so this was all done with brush paint. This was entirely airbrush. And the most interesting thing about this is you would think that you might use white or black or at least a dark gray in order to change the shading. No, you use a different shade of blue, a light blue, a medium blue, and a dark blue. This is the creature. And the creature was interesting. Use a very, very, very large brush, what's called a kabuki brush, for any of you who are used to makeup terms and who know what a kabuki brush is, to do the entire body very, very quickly. And then to get the mottled effect, you just spray a bunch of bursts of the darker color with the airbrush. For what it's worth, this was the entire class. I think everybody did about the same thing, a couple of green. The purple one is really weird looking in my opinion, but somebody wanted to try purple just to see what it would look like. One of the people from the show that does the airbrushing does faces, and I took a class with her. This was one of the faces that I did, and I'll zoom in real quickly on the eyes because I was pretty happy with the eyes. That was the second one that I did with the eyes. And then finally, one that was much more of a free-for-all, which is the hummingbird. All of these took about 2 or 3 hours, roughly, I would say, overall, by the time you get some instruction back and forth with the people that are running the seminars and the classes. But let me show you what is possible. I'm going to show you a few of the Sports Illustrated. This one probably started it all with Elle Macpherson. That's all body paint and very, very well done. And Sports Illustrated continued that with things of this nature. That's all paint, 100%, even the little shadows underneath each of the straps. That same thing. Let me just zoom in real quick. And you can actually see the stitching is all little dots of paint. So that's been one of my hobbies, body painting, and how you do it, the equipment, and what it ultimately looks like. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Munish Gupta, and he will be evaluated by Dagan Newland.
All right, so his speech is, he put the topic in the chat here as how to get rid of stress. His speech is 5 to 7 minutes. So based on what I've seen him speak in the table topics from last week, I know he's really good, so it might be hard to find something to improve on, but we'll see. And I'll just do, basic evaluation on him. And but again, his topic is how to get rid of stress. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you. Helping and welcoming Munish.
Good morning, everybody. Brian Tracy said, today I refuse to stress myself out about things I cannot control or change. When I was a child, I had a lot of stress before exam because I was not good at studies. Every year before exam, I always had a fear in my mind, will I clear the exam or not? Till graduation. Till graduation, I failed 3 to 4 times. I was one of the most duffer student of my school. After that, I started business. I live in a small town where it's difficult to get team of people who can work with you. Whenever any person from my team used to say goodbye to me, I used to have lots of stress. Whenever any staff member didn't turn up for a few days, I have a lots of fear in my mind, who will handle my business? After that, I was married. I was worried about my kids. How will they go to a reputed school? I want that they should study in a prestigious school. The reason is I didn't study. After completing their school, I was worried that they should go to one of the best school, college. I was worried about their college after school. I had a lot of stress regarding that. Before COVID-19, my daughter graduated. No have a stress. What will she do now? If I invest the money, whatever I am saving I have, that money will go into drain. The reason is at the time of COVID-19, there is no business which has a future. And my daughter can't join any job because employers are sacking their employees left and right. And my daughter, she has no experience. Who will give her a job? Life is full of stress. Nobody can escape from stress. It is inevitable. I know 2 ladies. One who lost her eyesight because of stress. Second, who got paralysis on her legs because she took a lot of stress and she works as a nurse in a hospital. Both the ladies now, they do not take stress because they have come to know the repercussion of stress. Some people, they drink alcohol, they take drugs to reduce the level of stress. But after some time, it becomes addiction. It's a waste of time, money, and you abuse your body. Stress ruins your teeth and gums. Stress makes your immune system slow. Stress makes you fat. Stress makes you look old. But we have to find different ways to get rid of stress. Recently, I met a person who told me before COVID-19, he used to take lots of stress. No, he stopped taking stress at the time of COVID-19. Everything was locked down. He was absolutely free. And he read many books. And he read a book of stress management, where one thing strikes in his mind. If he takes stress, he will lose his hair. He doesn't want that he should lose his hair, and he doesn't want to look bald. Whenever he has stress, he makes a picture in his mind that if he takes stress, he's going to lose his hair. I met one person in London. He comes to Harrod Mall every day. That's his schedule. And he parks his vehicle over there. Harrod Mall is one of the best malls in the world. And it's most costly brand we get over there. And that person comes in a vintage car. He smokes a Cuban cigar, which costs 20 pounds. People take the permission from him to take the photograph of his car. That person had 15 restaurants. He was a filthy rich man. Now he has only one restaurant. He left his English wife. He married the lady from Iran. Basically, he is originally from Iran. That lady is indescribably beautiful. That lady with his kids are ruining his life. She went to the court that he has to sell his property and divide his property. And now he has only one restaurant. He is ready to sell this property, divide his property, because he is fed up of that lady. People think that he is a very lucky man. He's a stylish man. He comes in a vintage car, smokes a Cuban cigar. But they do not know deep down, he's full of stress. He comes there to relieve the stress. 1 hour he parks the car. People speak to him. And I spoke to that person. The reason is I have an interest. I was also absolutely free. I met him every time whenever I went over there. I came to know, look at this man. Deep down his life is full of stress. And he comes there to relieve the stress. Whenever I have a stress, I write down. That helps me to get rid of stress. That is the best way. I went to many meditation centers. It didn't help me. But when I write down whatever problem I'm facing, it helps me like anything. Stress. Nature is a great way to help to get rid of stress. We have to go to the park and walk on the grass. We have to go in the woods. We have to do socializing. We have to do some physical activity. These things help us to get rid of stress. Brian Tracy said, today I refuse to stress myself out about things I cannot control or change. Thank you. Over to the Toastmaster, please.
Thank you. Dagan, did our speakers qualify based on time?
No, Mark was at 8 minutes, 32 seconds. And I'm sorry, yeah, 8 minutes, 32 seconds. And then Manoush was at 7 minutes, 44 seconds. So they both went over.
Okay, but feel free to send some comments to the speakers to give them some feedback as well. When I think about this year and 2020, I think we'll look at 2019 as old school. When we think about all the things that we used to do and longing for those good old days where we could hug, we could go to weddings, we could hang out in the break room and talk to our coworkers, go to the gym, and all the things that we used to do back in the day. I think even 2019 will feel like old school when this is all said and done with COVID-19, once we get a resolution. And so hopefully you'll have an opportunity to long for those old school days as well. At this time, I would like to hand the meeting over to our table topics master, Mark Haddad.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Greetings, everybody. It's good to see some old faces and some new faces here. Rob, I saw you just pop back into, just as a heads up, I prepared everything, so I'm going to go with it. Unless you want to jump into some table topics questions, feel free. But speaking to it, so table topics, what is it? This is a section where we work on our impromptu speaking. There will be times in our life where we're asked to speak either on the spot or asked a question, and we really have to think critically while also trying to come across speaking as clearly and confidently as possible. So that's what we practice here, having to think on our feet and put together a good answer, which typically comes with practice. It's hard to do, and it's something that we work on here in Toastmasters, and it's a pretty critical skill. So for table topics, I will be asking questions related to the topic. We will have 1 to 2 minutes to answer each question with a 30-second grace period at the end. To qualify, you must remain within time and you must use the word of the day. So who's our grammarian? Is it Mark Sims? Can you remind us the word of the day, please, and the definition?
Yes, the word of the day is intrepid. Again, it's an adjective. It means fearless. And I know we're all going to be fearless on tonight's table topics. So during the table topics responses, I'll hold this up just to give you a reminder to use this word in your remarks in order to be eligible to win the competition.
Thanks, Mark. We'll all try to be intrepid or fearless, or even if we do have a little fear like we sometimes do during table topics, we'll still get up and answer the question. So old school, when you think old school, you think, I think about people who would commonly use the phrase back in my day. And we're hearing this throughout the meeting a little bit. Back in my day, things used to be like this. You kids don't know anything about it. Name something that was around when you were younger, whether it's a trend or place or anything that is not around today and you wish was. Mark Sims.
Something that is not as common today is an old-fashioned men's barber shop. I mean, maybe you could still find a few, but I remember when I was growing up and the time came for our dad to get a haircut and I would go with him. There would be, as opposed to going to a stylist type of facility, it was an old-fashioned men's only facility where they're talking about sports, whatever. Sometimes you had to be a little intrepid to join in the conversations. Some of those I was a little young to. And it was just simply something that was part of a prior era. And this kind of was brought to my attention this week or yesterday on Veterans Day. I had a day off, went to get a haircut, and a couple of gentlemen who came in I think this was a business kind of akin to Pro Cuts or Super Cuts, were just wanting to get a trim, just trying to explain that to the hairstylist who kept asking them for a bunch more instructions. And so it just hit me, this was a long way from the type of place that Dad and I would go to when I was young. So it's not totally extinct, but it is somewhat part of a bygone era. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks, Mark. As Tanya mentioned, Old School is also a Will Ferrell movie. It's a great movie, which I also do recommend watching. And that takes us to something that we probably all have been doing a good amount of during COVID, is sitting around and watching movies. Obviously, along with other hobbies too, I'm sure. But keeping it with movies, what kind of movies have you been watching during COVID? And if so, what is your favorite movie specifically? Caroline.
Well, so recently I started a new job and a new career, being an art teacher. So I teach elementary kids, and I've started to watch all of their movies during all of this. And I love little kid movies, and that's kind of my genre. And I like the traditional ones, and I think it's really neat when I go into school and they're talking about different movies, and it's some of the same movies that I grew up with, and it's the ones that have been passed down for years and years, like Bambi and all of those. And I just think it's really neat that they also have those. And so I think that's kind of where I go to. I'm definitely a traditionalist. I like the traditional movies. I was that kid when I was younger who watched the same movie over and over again. I think I've seen Grease millions of times. I don't think that when it came to my movie venturing out, I wasn't very intrepid, kind of stuck to my tried and true movies that I liked. But I've been kind of trying to get into their genre just to kind of relate to them and kind of have something to talk about in class with them. Back to Toastmaster.
Thanks, Caroline. It is funny how some movies do stand the test of time and will be around. And no matter how old or how young people are, everyone has seen that movie and can talk about that movie. Very cool. TV shows, that is something, as Tanya mentioned, that we also think about, because there were a lot of good TV shows back when. Some are still around, some are just gone and forgotten, not watched as much. Name a TV show from childhood that you watched a whole lot of growing up, and maybe you still do, but let's hear about that TV show and what you liked about it. Karen Lee.
Well, Mr. Table Topics Master and fellow Toastmasters and guests, I was just talking to a close friend of mine, and she bought a new DVD, and she said that she used to love to watch the Charlie Brown Christmas. I used to love to watch the Charlie Brown Christmas. I didn't have to worry about any intrepid scenes in Charlie Brown Christmas. I could watch that Charlie Brown Christmas every year and enjoy myself. That's one of many different shows that I could watch. I know that we also enjoyed many other shows like Murder, She Wrote, or what else? I'm trying to think. Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best. A lot of those shows were around quite a long time ago, but I did enjoy those. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks, Karen. I do agree that Charlie Brown Christmas is a classic, and it has that one Christmas song that no matter how many times I hear it is always still good. I don't think I can ever get sick of that one piano song. Another thing that's old school, or can be old school, are sayings. There are a lot of sayings from back in the day, ones that we probably remember. Sayings like, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, or you are a sight for sore eyes, or one of my favorites, I've got to go see a man about a dog. Name a saying, old or new, that you still use and that you really like. Rob Giles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Topic Master. Old sayings. And one of the ones, and I'm not even sure exactly what it means, but I use it fairly often, and I don't really know what it means, but my uncle used to say it all the time, kind of like a good grief, although maybe it doesn't mean that. And it's Extra Lieber. And so it's, I guess, a German phrase or an Austrian phrase, but he would say that all the time, and it just stuck in my head. And I just continued to think about it. And as I grew older, and then after he passed away, I started to use it more for multiple reasons. It brought a smile to my face. It made me remember him. And I thought it was interesting. It was just an interesting phrase. I never looked it up to see what it meant, and I'm sure that I'm not pronouncing it exactly correct, but it's something that has stuck with me. There's also used the one about the dog, but I think I replaced dog with horse in that particular case. That may be done a lot of times for a lot of older phrases, but for me, the one that really stuck with me, and it has, you know, an emotional attachment for me, is that Extra Lieber. And it was because my uncle, he was very close to me. I was his godson as well, and that one really is emotionally attached to me, and it's interesting as well, I think. So back to you, Mr. Topic Master.
Thanks, Rob. And finally, I cannot mention old school without bringing up music. Such good old school music back in the day. You can look at it across decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even. Some people say the 2000s had pretty good music, and it did, but I'm a guy for the classics. What was your favorite kind of music that you listened to growing up, and why did you like it so much? Munish.
Good morning, everybody. I love to listen old songs. Whenever I feel tired, exhausted, I'm in the office. Because when I was young, I was interpret at that time. I used to watch the movies where violence is shown. And I love violence. And I love to listen the songs, which are old songs. At that time, old songs has meaning. Now the new song doesn't have any meaning. I don't enjoy listening to them. I love to listen Hindi songs, my own language. I try to listen English songs, but I don't understand. Sometimes I say to my daughter to make put it in that card. I'll listen in my vehicle, but I don't love to listen. Whenever I listen the old Hindi songs, when I'm tired, it uplifts my soul. It makes me happy. I don't listen more than 5 to 7 minutes. After that, I do self-analysis because I have to do so many things. But whenever I'm total worn out, I love to listen old songs. It has meanings. And it makes me feel happy. This is the best way to get rid of stress. If whenever somebody has a stress, this is also one of the best way to get rid of stress is to listen songs. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish. That is all I have for questions. I'm going to call for a timers report and grammarians report, because I think it's the same person. See if everyone's qualified.
No,
Okay, timers report first.
Timer is everybody qualified on time.
Okay, thanks, Tegan. And can we hear from our grammarian?
Yes. I will note the people that did use the word of the day, Mark Haddad in his intro. I did. Caroline, Karen did. Munish did. And I did not hear Rob hear it. Rob say it.
Okay. So with that being said, if you could just vote for your favorites or who you thought was the best table topic speaker. I am How are we doing the voting on here?
Send it to me.
Okay. Send it to Dagan directly via chat. And with that, I will turn it back over to our Toastmaster.
Okay, this evening, um, general evaluator is John Bustles, and I'll hand it off to him.
Thank you, Tanya. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. This is the evaluation portion of the meeting where I'm doing exactly what I say we're going to do, is we're going to evaluate, full evaluation of the speakers, evaluation of our duty holders, and just a general evaluation of the whole meeting. It's all great that we practice our speeches and we practice table topics, but we all need some creative criticism, and that's what the evaluation portion of the meeting involves. So tonight, I want to go ahead and I'm going to start with the evaluators for the prepared speeches. And we're going to go ahead and Lee King is evaluating Mark Schroeder. So Lee, go ahead, please, sir.
Fellow Toastmasters, guests, and especially Mark, gives me a great opportunity to evaluate your speech for this evening. I will use the 3-2-1 method where I'll point out 3 things that you did well, give you a couple of things to consider in the future, and then finally one thing that I thought you did really well with your speech for this evening. First and foremost, very interesting topic, something that I had not given much thought about. I'd heard of body painting, but I wasn't really familiar with it. So you definitely gave us very good insight into what body painting is, how it is done, and just a greater appreciation for the art. And I enjoy art, so definitely found your speech very interesting. You have very good organization. You explained to us what body painting is, and you told us how it's done, and then you showed us some examples. And I really appreciated the detail that you showed us. It went into very good detail as far as showing us what the different lines and stuff look like. So very well on your presentation. And finally, you left us with your speech of, at least from my perspective, really wanting to know more and giving me that insight into wanting to further pursue learning about body art. And I think that's a real skill that more advanced speakers have, is that ability to spark the flame of your audience and fan the flame a little bit, and then make us want to go out and learn more. So very good with that. A couple of things that I would suggest that you consider working on. One, getting a little more comfortable with the technology. I know that you had some challenges transitioning to when you went to your screen, getting that to work. Practicing that a little bit more, making sure that you're able to navigate a little bit smoother. The other thing that I would consider is a background. I saw your office, not this background that you have right now, would not be the most appropriate, but perhaps something that is a little more abstract using that particular paintbrush that would just further interest us in your speech, perhaps. That way we can see a little more and follow along a little bit easier, less distracting. But the one thing that I thought you did very well with your speech was using gestures and showing us the equipment on Zoom. And that was your main objective, and I will leave it at that, that you definitely met your objective. You were very good with your body language and showing us all of the equipment that you use for body art. Thank you very much for a great speech. Look forward to listening to more of your speeches. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Lee. Our next duty holder, or excuse me, our next evaluator is Dagan Newland, and he's going to evaluate Manish's speech. So, Dagan, will you please take it away, sir?
Okay. Well, first I want to say thank you, Manish, for that wonderful speech, and I hope I do this justice, because I was having a hard time of doing the timing and all that and trying to write down my notes. But I do want to say, you do a really good job on your speaking abilities, and I can see that also you've been the Toastmaster, for a little bit at least. But I'm gonna do a 3-2-1 method. I'm gonna talk about 3 things I liked about it, a couple of things to improve on, then one thing I really liked about your speech. The first thing I liked about your speech was, you had really great presence, you had really good posture, and you actually, stood up for the speech, where, a lot of us, stay sitting when we're doing our speeches. So I think overall, if we could all just do a little better job of standing up to give our speech, it just gives a speech an overall, better feel. The next thing I really liked is the hand gestures. Your hand gestures were really good, and they flowed well with your speech. I didn't see anything that's really out of line with your hand gestures. So overall, your hand gestures were really, really good. The next thing I liked about your speech is just the way you spoke it and gave us your stories. I could easily visualize in my head of what you're thinking about, and the different ways that people cause stress. For example, when you talked about having the exams and causing you stress, and the business, and getting married and having kids, those things most of us can relate to. Now a couple of things I'd like for you to improve on is, of course, the time. You did go over, so maybe just work on that time piece for a little bit. And the second thing is that you gave us a lot of information on, how things cause stress. Like, for the example that I just mentioned, the marriage and kids growing, your kids growing up, and what are they going to do, and things like that. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about, how to get rid of stress. I think you could add a little bit more of that, and maybe cut out some of the stuff that how it causes stress, and talk more about how to get rid of it. And one thing I really liked is the overall great stories about the stress, and the way you had it lined up, kind of chronologically. It's just really great, just really overall great speech. So thank you, Minish. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you, Dagan. Very good job, both my evaluators. And now I'd like to call on a timers report. Did both evaluators qualify on time?
Yes, Lee qualified.
Mr. Schroeder?
Oh, boy, I forgot. I did not get a reminder and I forgot to do it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was timing myself too, and I was at 2 minutes and 48 seconds. So.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Dagan. I'm glad you did that.
I was watching, I didn't see that purple change. I said he should have been somewhere by now, but okay.
No, I completely, with everything else going on, I zoned it. My bad.
Okay, that's fine. I got it. All right, so both evaluators qualified on time. So let's go ahead and, if you would now, take a minute and vote by private chat to Dagan on who you thought did the best job as evaluator this evening. Now I'm going to take a couple of minutes and do an evaluation of the meeting. Then my duty holders can come in and evaluate everybody and me. So first off, I loved the subject, old school, the theme of our meeting. I'm very old school. It's funny. I think the older I get, the more I lean from my old school, from my progressive to my old school world. Because I always thought of myself as kind of really open-minded and really progressive and trying different things. But I still love that old school stuff. And I think the categories kind of changed to where old school is just what I'm accustomed to. But of course, my old school is what my parents' old school was, because both my parents are gone, but they've been both over 100 now. So, and I got a lot of old school information from them, because they both grew up in the farms and rural and everything. So it was always just really interesting even to hear their world. So great, good presentation, good theme, good subject matter. Mr. Haddad, since you're one of those marks, I don't want anybody to get confused. Good job at table topics tonight. You've been out of practice, but you just stepped right in and just did a great job. One of the things I did like tonight that doesn't usually happen is you went back to the grammarian Mark and had him reintroduce the word of the day. A lot of times as a table topics, we go, and don't forget to use the word of the day, intrepid or whatever. But you went back to Mark and had him explain it again. And I thought that was actually pretty interesting and a good way to do it now. And that's as a better reminder than just throwing out that word to us, especially in Zoom where we don't all have our little flags out in the audience and hold them up trying to remind everybody to do the word of the day. So all in all, that was great. Also, all your questions were really groovy, old school. Anyway, and I thought all your questions were really relevant to the theme, and I thought they all hit in different categories on the theme, and they were, to me, easy to answer. I could have jumped on every single one of those and just gone off on it because it just all fit with me. I still watch Leave It to Beaver every day. It's on my TV in the background when I'm working from home. I just turn on MeTV and I see Leave It to Beaver every morning while I'm working my emails and stuff. So that's what I would have brought up. And then Karen mentioned Leave It to Beaver, and that just clicked with me again. So great job with table topics. Great job with the Toastmaster and the subject and the theme and carrying it off. Did a great job tonight. Oops. Karen, you didn't hear that. So all in all, I'd like us all do a great job. We all did a great job. I gotta stop saying a great job. Lets me get out of that wind a minute. Speech went well tonight. Everything went just very decently. We flowed pretty smoothly. So I'd like to go ahead and move on to our duty holders this evening. And we'll start with Karen Lee because you had two of them, posture monitor and counter. So will you present the report to the Toastmasters, please?
Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. On our counter duty, I heard Tanya used several times. Mark Haddad used it a couple times. Caroline did use some us. I did use some. And transitioning to posture belt, a lot of folks were sitting down, so it was hard to evaluate that. I did see Mark Schroeder use the physical demonstration when he was giving his speech of body painting. Unish Gupta stood up and used a lot of body language because when he was giving his speech. Dagan was using his hands when he was giving his evaluation. So that's my report, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Karen. Our next duty holder for tonight is Mark Sims as our grammarian. So will you give me your grammarian report, sir? Is he there? I'm not on my screen.
Looks like he's gone.
Oh, okay. Well, then let me just hit a couple of things. A lot of people used intrepid tonight. I just used it, haha. But a lot of people use the word of the day, even besides being in table topics. So that's always nice to hear. I liked a lot of the interesting grammar was talking about old school. And speaking of Leave It to Beaver, the other day I saw June was talking to Ward about Wally doing something, and he said, if he doesn't have the gumption to go out and do such and such, there's just something wrong with him. And June looked at him and said, really, Grandpa? And so even gumption was old school, even for them, and that was the 60. So I've got some gumption tonight, mentioned that. Good grammar tonight. I didn't hear anything often, are egregious in the use of the English language. So I'm going to say the grammarian did all a good job tonight. Thank you.
Now, Mark is back.
Now,
Mark is back, but I don't know if he's got a microphone yet.
Okay. Mr. Sims, if you can, will you please give me your grammarian report? I don't.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a microphone.
Okay, there he is. Oh, and I don't see his picture yet either. He must have got dropped.
He got dropped. He's trying to get back in.
Yeah.
I see no camera, but I don't even see a microphone icon. He may not be.
Oh, that's
allowed
all
to.
right.
It was worth asking.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the president, and so it's like I expected to go to the business meeting to him. So we'll see if he reconnects. So now I would like to call for a vote on who we thought did the best of the big three. The big three are our Toastmaster tonight, Tanya, our Table Topics Master, Mark Haddad, and myself as General Evaluator. So if you would take a moment, send a private chat to Dagan and he'll tabulate our votes for that too. Let's see, another evaluation. Let me talk about GE since we're just killing them. There's Mark. Now if he'll just talk, look up, Mark, look up. Anyone just see it. Mr. Sims. Okay, Mark. Oops.
I'm still seeing no microphone on him.
Well, it said connected for a minute, then it dropped again.
Oh,
Yes,
You've got
There
it.
he is.
I'm back. I'm very sorry. I sent in my vote for the best evaluator, tried to exit the private chat and everything just froze. So
Okay.
and of course, the more it froze, the slower it was, the more I started punching buttons. So I had to exit and come back on.
Okay. Well,
John, go
let me
ahead.
just tell you, I already finished my portion, but since you're back, if you want to give a grammarian's report, you can. I've called for a vote of the big three, and so then you can just move into the business meeting. Okay.
Excellent. Just very briefly, no grammatical lapses noted. Obviously, some very good phrasing tonight, or not as much colorful phrases, but some meaningful phrases, some interesting phrases. I thought Mark Schroeder's reference to the creature was a little unchivalrous, but in the next slide, the purple woman really was a creature. So, okay, it was harsh, but kind of accurate. Munish was very wise that nature is a great way to relieve stress, being outdoors, getting a walk, getting that exercise. Tanya said something I would not have thought of, but 2019 does in a sense seem like old school. Going to movies, going to restaurants where it was just no big deal, and now it's something you have to consider. Carolyn used the word genre, which is a good word to use as an alternative. And Rob, Oxtralieber. Okay, we all can think of a memorable phrase that some loved one used. I recall my father would get disgusted at times if someone was acting incompetently, and he would say that person was acting like a jackass lost in a hailstorm.
Oh, Mr. Sims?
Yes.
Mr. Sims? Octunlever means good heavens, oh dear Lord.
Okay,
That's what
thank
it
you.
replaces. Yeah, so Rob
Yeah, I
knows
looked
now.
it up, got the same thing. Oh dear God, it's actually normally includes the word got, G-O-T-T at the end of it, and it is a shortened form.
Excellent. As far as the business tonight, one thing I want to note is that, and Rob, you may want to have an announcement on this about Mark Schroeder. I saw that Mark, I got a notice that you had received another award like VC level 2. Does it? So
I think that is correct.
congratulations for
I think that is correct,
continued
yes.
success and the further advancing on the pathways path. We again have two, or actually 3 guests tonight, although one is an old friend. It's good to see Caroline again, and thank you for joining. And you were able to give us some information last week. Anything you want to add on tonight's meeting, or where you're at in deciding to become part of our group?
Well, I messaged Mark Schroeder about this earlier, but I do want to join. I was meaning to get to it before this Thursday. I was excited after the last meeting, and I don't know how this Thursday snuck up on me so fast, but I looked down at the day and I was excited to get back on Thursday again, but realized I hadn't completed the form. So I'm gonna get that done. So hopefully I will be a member soon.
Amazing. That is really terrific. And we appreciate that confidence, and just let us know what you're wanting, how we can help you develop in public speaking, leadership opportunities, because this is a great avenue for that. And Anish, thank you for joining us again this week, and thank you for speaking tonight, being prepared with a speech. And any additional comments do you have?
Yes, I like the Toastmaster meeting. Whenever I attend this Toastmaster meeting, I learn one thing. Today I learned one thing, that only in this Toastmaster meeting I learned that we should not touch our the specs and we should not fiddle with our hair. It doesn't look nice, but this is a good thing which I've learned. I've seen many people, including me. I also keep on touching my face, this specs, and I this fiddle with my eyes. It doesn't give a good impression. It's a good idea. I really like it. Instead, when we learn that not to use the filler, we should not touch the specs and not to fiddle with the hair also. Thank you. Over to the Toastmaster, please.
Very accurate, because usually when I see someone take the glasses off and do this thing, I think of my boss trying to cover up his exasperation with me. So, no, very good point. And Mark Haddad, it's always great to see you. You want to tell us a little about what's going on in your life?
Sure. It is a lot of the same things that are going on in a lot of people's lives, from working from home a lot. You know, it's good and bad. Like we all say, there's good parts, like waking up and just your commute being to the kitchen to make some coffee. At the same time, you know, you kind of miss the way that the old school way that the world used to be. And even if that means going in the office every once in a while, believe it or not, I kind of do miss just being around coworkers. And, you know, not every day, if we could, you know, do a week on, week off type of thing. That's my suggestion to going forward, consolidate some space. But hopefully this next year is better for all of us. We can go back to things like in-person meetings and just a more normalized life. But that's it. It's good to see everyone again. And, you know, I need to start dropping in more on more of these meetings. It's always fun to do.
Great. It's good to see you. And you hit upon something that about obviously working from home and dealing with the COVID environment. Is that just keep in mind, Mark, that for the remainder of this year, at least we'll still be on Zoom, because we had talked previously that it's getting late enough in the year that, as always, after Thanksgiving, we would usually go to a different facility anyhow, since we would most likely be bumped from the zonas. But again, given the lateness of the year and then the seems like sustained bad news on the pandemic, that definitely through the end of the year, we're on Zoom. So please join us as much as you have an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, in fact, this is Mark Schroeder. As mentioned, because Ozonas get so many parties toward the end of the year, we have always left Ozonas between Thanksgiving and January, for the first weekend in January. This year will be no different, obviously, but for different reasons. I think about the best we can do to simulate that maybe I come up with a different password after Thanksgiving maybe, and it'll feel like a new room, but that's about the best I can do. Sorry.
Okay. Totally understand. We're all dealing as best we can. And I'm trying to think about any other club news. Obviously, all the contests are behind us. I think what we need to consider here between now and the end of the year is probably we need to get back, set aside some time to have an officers meeting and get back on the distinguished club plan and pick up on where we are at there. So I'll keep that in mind, and we will set aside some time, have an officers meeting and address that. here in the near future.
Mark,
Mr. Sims,
there is actually one thing that I noticed. I think this was about a week ago, but Toastmasters International, because so many, well, pretty much all the clubs, I think, internationally right now are on Zoom. If they are meeting in person, they really should be on Zoom if there are COVID cases or anything like Dallas County. But regardless, because of that, Toastmasters International is giving everybody, all the current members, a free path between now and the end of the year. So if you haven't gotten your free path, don't forget to go out online and get your free path.
Yeah, in fact, is it really the end of the
Oh.
year? I thought it was March of 2021 that you could get it that late.
I think it's
Let me check the
until
email real
December
quick.
the 31st, but
I'll check the
either
email
way.
real quick. But yeah, you can get a free one, and Rob had talked with me about that. The recommendation, of course, is to do that while you can get it, because you might as well take advantage of it. Let me see, here's the email, and it says,
Yeah, I would say just do it now.
plentiful so far. What it
While
says,
he's
what it
reading,
says
okay.
is click the choose a path button and follow the normal path selection process to redeem it before March 31st, 2021. That's not a good reason to delay it, but if you happen to forget it between now and the end of the year, you have not lost it. I'll go ahead and resend out that email to everybody in the club just so that you have it handy.
and Mr. Sims, I guess this is, since we're meeting virtually, we still are not going to have one on Thanksgiving night, right? A Toastmasters meeting.
Mm-mm.
I would say no, just simply because the meeting falls literally on the holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was just a day or two difference, it might be another thing, but I would recommend no. And I guess that would be the same thing for, I think Christmas is on the 25th also, I believe. I mean, obviously on the 25th, on the Thursday also.
That's Christmas Eve. This year, I think
Oh,
Christmas
okay.
Eve and New Year's Eve fall on Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
Okay, you're right, thank you. So same thing for
Maybe we
there.
can. Maybe we can have it at midnight on New Year's Eve because it might be out.
No.
I'm just
No.
teasing.
You would have to yell at me to wake me up during
Yeah.
that, so.
I know about half the time, me too. Anyway. Okay.
And I'm trying to think, I don't believe we would be voting for officers since we're on annual terms.
We
Which
shifted to
is
yearly,
good.
that is correct. Yes,
Okay.
we changed the bylaws for that.
Is there any other business that comes to mind? And Tanya, I just want to say the door behind you opened. So I'm glad this isn't Halloween night, because otherwise it would have been an eerie appearance.
Tomorrow's Friday the 13th.
Okay. Yeah, that is something to consider. Dagan, would you please tell us who the winners are on the competitions?
Right. So also we have to skip best speaker, but the best table topics is going to be our guest Caroline, and our best evaluator goes to me, and the best of the big three goes to our tabletop master Mark Haddad.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you all again. It's good to see you, and good to see you the second time since I dropped off during the meeting, but everyone have a great weekend, and we will see each other next Thursday night. Take care.
All right. Bye.
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 As your facilitator, anybody that wants to stick around and talk for a few minutes, you may do so. I'm going to stop the meeting recording in 3, 2,